Okay, good evening. The time is not on my screen right now. 6:09 p.m. It is Monday, July the 13th. I call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees of Goose Creek CISD to order. Assistant Secretary Clem, was this meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
And do we have a quorum of board members?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Now, due to health and safety concerns related to COVID-19 coronavirus, this meeting will be conducted by video conference or telephone call. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus COVID-19. For more information about the suspension, see TASB Legal Services article, Texas Governor Suspends Certain Provisions of Open Meetings Act due to coronavirus COVID-19. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. And although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference through Cisco WebEx or telephone call. We are meeting by use of Cisco WebEx software application, which allows two-way communication for members of the public. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak during the public comment portion will be unmuted for 3 minutes to speak. If the speaker submitted written comments in advance, the board secretary will read the comments into record before or during the board's consideration of that item. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow the instructions in the meeting notice posted on the district website. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. This software application allows for 1,000 people to view and interact at a time. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. If you have questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma@oag.texas.gov. All right, so at this time, I would like to continue with our tradition of opening exercises. We are going to have prayer and pledge led by Vice President Ben Poppy and by Augustine Laredo. So if you please join us now as we open our meeting. Mr. Ben Poppy.
All right, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this evening. We're grateful for all the blessings that Thou hast given us. We're grateful for Thy Son, Jesus Christ. We're grateful that we could come this evening and be able to discuss the concerns, the issues that are before us and the way before. We pray that during this troubling times with this pandemic, that those that have been affected, that will be comforted, that those that are being harmed, that they'll be able to overcome the disease. We pray that we can have the influence and guidance to move forward in this fall semester, that we can make the best decisions going forward for the community. We pray for a special blessing for the staff and the students and the community of Goose Creek. We pray for these things in Thy name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee,
Texas.
Texas, one
under
state,
God,
under God, one
and
and indivisible.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like to thank the many people who have been emailing in support with prayers and thoughts during this time. We have a lot of important decisions to make and not a lot of precedents to follow as we make our journey back to school this fall. We will take time now for citizen participation. Citizens who have registered with the recording secretary may address the board on matters other than the character of any student, staff, or board member. Since the item addressed by the speaker may not have been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Law, board members may only listen to the individual's statement and may not discuss the item with the patron or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Each individual heard shall be allotted no more than 3 minutes for the presentation. However, if more than 10 citizens register to address the board, more time may be given by a majority vote of the board. I believe we have 10, 6 emailed in per instructions and 4 live, Mr. Flood. Shall we start with our live guests?
Sure. The first live person is Dawn Queen. And you are unmuted.
And you will have 3 minutes, and you will be given a 1-minute warning when your time is about to expire. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm here to speak tonight in favor of not changing the name of Robert E. Lee High School. My name is Don Queen, and I'm a 1977 graduate of Robert E. Lee. My parents are both former school teachers from this district. And as I understand it, during a closed session, there may be a vote taken to change the name of the school. As I also understand it, the Baytown Historical Society has spent a significant amount of time getting the high school named as a historical building. It was built in 1928. So as of today, it's give or take 92 years old. It has been the center of Baytown, which was the name of the town that drew all of these little bitty communities together, like Goose Creek, Wooster, and several others. Our current national narrative paints Robert E. Lee as nothing more than a traitor and a racist. If we accept only these qualities of the man, then we overlook his entire character. It's though we are looking at a burn mark on a man's face or a woman's face and judging their character by that mark. Here are some additional character traits and contributions to the U.S. by Robert E. Lee. He was a military engineer after West Point and participated in the surveying of the southern border of Michigan and laid out the state lines between Ohio and Michigan. He served as superintendent for West Point. He was not for secession, and he believed that the Union should persist. He believed that slavery was a moral and political evil. He was a revered figure in both the North and the South after the Civil War. He publicly supported and advocated for reconciliation between the North and the South after the Civil War. He also advocated for public school education for blacks after the war. During his tenure as president of Washington College, he regularly expelled students for physical attacks on blacks.
Mr. Queen, you have 1 minute remaining.
He supported the 13th Amendment and the extinction of slavery. He was described as dignified without hauteur, grand without pride. We cannot change the past by renaming a school or removing a monument, and we do not remedy our present through political expediency. Renaming a school or removing a name from a school because we don't like a part of an individual's character deprives us of the full understanding of their place in history. If we remove Robert E. Lee's name from the first high school in Baytown, then we shouldn't take any half measures with regards to all of this city's school history. nor our state's history, nor our nation's history. We should also consider renaming schools in this district that are named after historical figures who have a racist past. This could turn out to be an expensive proposition when that money could be put to better use, like supplies for students. With regards to the state, we should also rename Austin, Stephen F. Austin State University, and Sam Houston State University.
Mr.
we shouldn't
Queen, your
stop
time
there
is up.
Thank you for letting me address the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Queen. Mr. Flood, you have a next speaker.
Yes, our next speaker is Jace Fontenot, and I see you connected twice, so I'm going to unmute one of them and see if that works. Jace, are you able to talk?
I unmuted myself. My wife is listening on the computer in the other room. Well, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak at tonight's meeting. I have a concern related to the reopening of campuses for face-to-face instruction. I'm concerned on how we're going to handle a potential decrease in staff due to the pandemic, and I'm mainly referring to those teachers that fall into high-risk categories as outlined by the CDC. So this includes pregnant women, along with people who have conditions such as diabetes, obesity, and history of stroke or heart attack. Now, we've been given instructions to reach out to benefits for accommodations, but I'm concerned about what if those accommodations are going to provide and how they're going to protect these specific teachers. If these accommodations to protect these teachers can't be met, they're instructed then to file for FMLA. And I'm just curious, what is the district's plan when potentially a third of its teachers file for FMLA due to falling into the above mentioned high-risk categories? And that is all I have for tonight, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Fontenot.
All right, our next one is Gia Lynn, but I do not see that person's name connected.
If you are a call-in, could you unmute yourself if you are the next? Nope. Okay.
No, and they said that they would use the computer audio instead of doing a dial-in.
Okay.
But I do not see that name in the list, either first name or last.
Okay, well, let's go to the next one, and we'll make an attempt to allow her to speak
Okay.
at the end of the time here.
All right, and my next one is Sherry Kopecki, I think. I may be saying that wrong. And I thought I saw her connected, but I do not see her connected anymore.
Okay, yeah, if we, if either of you are able to join the call before we are concluded with our citizens' participation, we will check back. At this time, I will ask Assistant Secretary Richard Clem to read into the record responses that were submitted through email.
All right, the first one I have is from Lena Farias. Here is an awesome list of questions I feel need to be addressed by GCCISD. If a teacher tests positive for COVID-19, are they required to quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks? Is their sick leave covered or paid? If that teacher has 5 classes a day with 30 students each, do all 150 of those students need to then stay home and quarantine for 14 days? Do all 150 of those students now have to get tested? Who pays for those tests? Are they happening at school? How are their parents being notified? Does everyone in each of those kids' families need to get tested? And who pays for that? What if someone who lives in the same house as a teacher tests positive? Does that teacher now need to take 14 days off of work to quarantine? Is that time off covered or paid? Where is the district going to find a substitute teacher who will work in a classroom full of exposed, possibly infected students for substitute pay? Substitutes teach in multiple schools. What if they are diagnosed with COVID-19? Do all the kids in each school now quarantine and get tests? Who is going to pay for that? What if a student in your kid's class tests positive? What if your kids test positive? Does every other student and teacher they have been around quarantine? Do we all get notified who is infected and when? Or because of HIPAA regulations, are parents and teachers just going to get mysterious, may have been in contact emails all year long? What is this stress going to do to our teachers? How does it affect their health and well-being? How does it affect their ability to teach? How does it affect the quality of education they are able to provide? What is it going to do to our kids? What are the long-term effects of consistently being terrified? How will it affect students and faculty when the first teacher in their school dies from this? The first parent of a student who brought it home? The first kid? How will buses keep the recommended 6 foot distance between students? One kid per seat? Is there enough buses, drivers, and time for this to even be done properly? How many more people are going to die that otherwise would not have if we had stayed home longer? Next, I have from Kaylee Fontenot. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to comment. I am a high school ELA teacher and coach in the district. I am also an alumni who attended school in GCCISD from 3rd through 12th grade. I love the school I work for and take great pride in being a ranger. However, first, I am a mom.
I can't hear what people are saying.
I know in any given year I am risking my health and safety by working with students. I do my best to stay informed and healthy so that I may serve the students on campus. This being said, the nature of this illness we are faced with is very different than any we've ever experienced before. I can say that normally.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
Are y'all hearing back feedback? Okay. I can say that normally I feel relatively safe to come to work each day, even after experiencing an after shooter across the street from our
Whatever
campus.
that is. Go to dad.
This is not how I feel now. I feel my students and my life is being knowingly put in danger. I have been tracking state data in regards to COVID and with the help of my pediatrician since March. Our state positivity level is the 5th highest in the nation. Knowing how a school functions, I do not think we can safely return currently without risking many, many lives. We have always said that students cannot learn when they don't feel safe. How will we expect them to learn knowing that they are not? How are we expected to teach knowing the same? My greatest fear is knowingly endangering them or my children at home by exposure. I have a toddler and an infant. I actually continued to distance teach while lying in my delivery bed at the hospital this past spring. If I was able to answer students' questions in the morning before my C-section and check Google Classroom that afternoon in my recovery room, then I know it is possible to provide quality educations at a distance in any circumstance, especially with planning. I urge you to please consider the lives of our students, teachers, and faculty, and their loved ones at home who would be endangered by their exposure. I know our district is not okay with losing any life that could. We will return to the classroom, and every teacher I know is looking forward to this once the time is right and our state, much less our country, is no longer in crisis. Thank you again for accepting public input, and I ask that you please keep the faces of GCCISD in mind when making your decision. Thank you, Kaylee Fontenot. In interest of my voice, can I pass these over to Mr. Poppy? Thank you.
Okay, the next one is from Esteban Gerardo. To the GCCISD Board of Trustees and Superintendent, my name is Esteban Gerardo. I am writing you as a teacher of Gentry Junior School, a parent, and a member of the Baytown community. The task of coordinating a safe return to school during these trying times cannot be an easy one, and it is understandable that tough decisions, which not everyone will agree with, are being made. This task is made further difficult by the state and federal agencies that oversee education, and have decided that we must return as soon as possible or risk funding. Locally, we have been given some scenarios of what going back to school will be, yet the impression is that we will be asked to return to the school building soon in August. I understand we, our educators and children, are our priority. There will be measures taken to reduce risk, reduce not avoid. Even so, as a parent of new kindergartner, the worry and anxiety about the school year ahead is insurmountable. My child's well-being is the most important thing in this world. I'm sure you can all understand. This virus has proven difficult to control, and we are being asked to return to the classroom when the state and our surrounding community are at a worse infection rate than when we left for spring break. Just last week, the state broke a record of over 10,000 cases in one day. Returning to any form of face-to-face instruction and transportation so close to the current wave, I fear, would leave us at a higher risk for infection. We are not asking for you to go against the directives of our governing bodies. We are simply asking we seek other options within those guidelines to delay the date when we will be in the same room as students, whether we start instruction online as other districts are doing and phase in the hybrid model or any other options. We just ask for a bit more time. Let's allow time to slow the spread of infection and let our medical community deal with the current spike. Unfortunately, our national and state leadership have turned our well-being into a ridiculous political issue. This is not about choosing political sides, it is about doing the right thing. We cannot tell children to value education so they can be things like scientists and then turn back on the experts warning us about returning to school too soon. As the community, we entrust that you, as trustees and superintendent, truly value our most precious members and that you fight for what is best for them. Please fight for the children and fight for our teachers, fight for our community. Let's make our return to school safer. Do the right thing. Thank you, Esteban Garado. The next one's from Donna Thompson. Dr. O'Brien, as a former teacher of GCCISD, a parent of 2 children who attended Goose Creek K through 12, and a grandmother of one to start kindergarten this year, I am writing to express my opinion and grave worry on the start of school. I realize that TEA has mandated school start as they work from home through January.
Ben, can you hear me?
I got you, Mr. Sampson.
Poppy,
Yes, I got
can you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
Let
hear
the
you.
record reflect at 6:31 p.m.
Yep.
Mr. Sampson has joined the meeting. Hey, Howard. Okay, we're in citizens participation and Mr. Poppy is reading letters into the record. I see you, Howard.
I realize that TEA has mandated school start as they work from home through January. The people in charge in our state have no children or grandchildren about to start public schools in a few weeks. These state officials are going along with the president, who never went to public school, nor did his children or grandchildren, and Betsy DeVos, who never went to public school and did not even go to a public college, nor did her children or do her grandchildren. She went on TV yesterday saying children have to go back to school, but never answered a question posed to her on how this can be done following CDC guidelines.
Okay.
With the above being said, I understand the no-win situation the district and school board is in. My suggestion is to push the start of school back several weeks or
I can't
longer.
hear you.
Mr. Sampson, can you hear me? All right. I have heard no one mandate that public schools have to start in August. They say school must start this fall. Fall is between September 22nd and December 21st this year.
Yeah, I'm one upstairs.
By pushing the school start date back, it is giving more time to plan. What happens when COVID shows up in a school, and we know it will, get in supplies needed to be safe, reconfigure your campuses to accommodate more classrooms, to have fewer children in them, hire more teachers, and figure out what happens when substitutes cannot be found when teachers are sick with other things, not COVID. Just because we now live with COVID doesn't mean stomach viruses, sinus infections, injuries have disappeared from our lives. Teachers will still need person business days, and they, more than now than ever, need mental health days. I also subbed in our district, and I don't see a long line of people signing up to sub when they get no medical insurance coverage and the pay is not great. I realize much learning time has been lost. We can always make up learning lost. We cannot make up lives lost. Please push back the date school starts in our great district. Sincerely, Donna Thompson.
Mr. Sampson, can you hear us? You have one more letter, Mr. Poppy? 2 more letters. Okay.
This one's from Latoya, Washington. Hello, my name is Latoya Washington. I am an employee of the district and a resident of Baytown. I'm a certified digital educator, have experience in providing blended learning, and have assisted in developing a transitional science curriculum in my previous position. I appreciate the time and hard work everyone has put into developing a plan that attempts to return learning to our students. However, I do believe that these plans have not addressed many of the concerns that students, parents, and staff may have. First, I do believe that very little consideration has been given to staff with children who opt to not have their children receiving face-to-face instruction, and those with children who are younger than school age. With these proposed reopening plans, many district employees do not have the option to keep our children at home if we are required to return to the physical classroom. If there has been an attempt to address this on a case-by-case basis, some staff have been left out of the conversation. Secondly, requiring secondary instructional staff to move between several classrooms gives us little control over the cleanliness of the rooms in which we are expected to give instruction. I also have not seen any mention of who will monitor students during class transition since teachers will be on the move. Finally, I do believe that requiring synchronous virtual learning at any time places many in our community at a disadvantage. As stated in the last meeting, approximately 12% of our students do not have access to technology or internet at home. If at any time we convert to 100% virtual, these families would not be able to meet the attendance requirements necessitated by synchronous learning. This also affects families and more than one student in the home. I propose 1. Virtual learning is the default. Allow parents to opt in for face-to-face learning. 2. Asynchronous mini lessons of 15 to 30 minutes each day of the week. 3. Synchronous office hours by subject area. If students cannot attend, allow appointments for Q&A tutorials via digital calendars. 4. Online collaboration spaces for discussion using any of the numerous options. IG, Google Classroom, Twitter, EduBlogs, message boards, Facebook, etc. I know it is not possible to appease everyone, but there should be at least an effort to ensure that everyone has options to remain safe. Sincerely, Latoya Washington. All right, and the last one is from Mrs. Mary Teresa Torres. As a teacher, I state the following. I pray the best decision is made. Nurses and medical professionals have been in front line of this all. But back to school, we will be the true front line. Medical professionals have PPE, have strict policies in place, and yet the hospital still became the most dangerous place to be in March. Appointments canceled, surgeries canceled, and the cases were nowhere near what they are now. What PPE will teachers, students have? What face shields, safety goggles be allowed? Will we have stricter mandates? Are we providing intense virtual trainings for teachers? So many questions, so many unknowns. Chicken pox is a virus. Lots of people have had it and probably don't think about it much once the initial illness has passed, but it stays in your body and lives there forever. And maybe when you're older, you have debilitating, painful outbreaks of shingles. You don't just get over this virus in a few weeks, never to have another health effect. We know this because it's been around for years and has been studied medically for years. HIV is a virus. It attacks the immune system and makes the carrier far more vulnerable to other illnesses. It has a list of symptoms and negative health impacts that goes on and on. It was decades before viable treatments were developed that allowed people to live with a reasonable quality of life. Once you have it, it lives in your body forever and there is no cure. Over time, it takes a toll on the body, putting people living with HIV at greater risk for health conditions such as cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, diabetes, bone disease, liver disease, cognitive disorders, and some types of cancer. We know this because it has been around for years and had been studied medically for years. Now with COVID-19, we have a novel virus that spreads rapidly and easily. The full spectrum of symptoms and health effects is only just beginning to be cataloged, much less understood. So far, the symptoms may include fever, fatigue, coughing, pneumonia, chills, trembling, acute respiratory disease, lung damage, potentially permanent, loss of taste, a neurological symptom, sore throat, headaches, difficulty breathing, medical confusion, diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, loss of appetite. Strokes have also been reported in some people with COVID-19, even in the relatively young. Swollen eyes, blood clots, seizures, liver damage, kidney damage, rash, COVID toes. Weird, right? People testing positive for COVID-19 have been documented to be sick even after 60 days. Many people are sick for weeks, get better, and then experience a rapid and sudden flare-up and get sick all over again. A man in Seattle was hospitalized for 62 days, and while well enough to be released, still has a long road of recovery ahead of him, not to mention a $1.1 million medical bill. There is a MIS-C, multisystem inflammatory syndrome, in children is a condition where different body parts can become inflamed, including the heart, lungs, kidneys, brain, skins, eyes, gastrointestinal organs. Children with MIS-C have have a fever and various symptoms, including abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea, neck pain, rash, bloodshot eyes, or feeling extra tired. While rare, it has caused deaths. This disease has not been around for years. It has basically been 6 months. No one knows yet the long-term health effect or how it will be present itself years down the road for people who have been exposed. We literally do not know what we do not know. For those in our society who suggest that people will be cautious or cowards, for people who refuse to take even the simplest of precautions to protect themselves and those around them, I want to ask without hyperbole and in all sincerity, how dare you? How dare you risk the lives of others so cavalierly? How dare you decide for others that they should welcome exposure as getting it over with, when literally no one knows who will be the lucky mild symptoms case and who will fall ill and die? Because while we know that some people are more susceptible to suffering a more serious case, we also know that 20 or 30 years old have died, marathon runners and fitness nuts have died, children and infants have died. How dare you behave as though you know more than medical experts, when those same experts acknowledge that there is so much we don't know yet, but with what we do know, are smart enough to be scared of how easily it is to spread and recommend baseline precautions such as frequent hand washing, physical distancing, reduce social public contact or interaction, mask wearing, covering your cough or sneeze, avoiding touching your face, sanitizing frequently, touch surfaces. More things we can do all to mitigate our risk of exposure, the better off we all are, in my opinion. Not only does it flatten the curve and allow healthcare providers to maintain levels of service that aren't immediately and catastrophically overwhelmed, it also reduces unnecessary suffering and deaths, and buys time for the scientific community to study the virus in order to come to a more full understanding of the breadth of its impacts in both the short and long term. I reject the notion that it's just the virus, and we'll all get it eventually. What a careless, lazy, heartless stance. And finally, using the line, it's my constitutional right to decide not to wear it if unapplicable at this time. Miss Mary Teresa Torres. That is all of them.
Thank you. And I think we have just a few minutes left. Matt, do we have either of the two that we're logging in for public comment? If not, we're going to move on. Nope, neither of them. Okay, so thank you everyone for your participation during citizens participation time. Again, if you would like to participate in future meetings, please visit the webpage for Goose Creek CISD and follow instructions on the board page for either submitting your comments or signing up to speak. We're going to move on to agenda item 3, discussion items, and I do believe, Dr. O'Brien, you have a superintendent's report for us.
Yes, ma'am. We have Dr. Duarte with us, and she will be presenting an update to last week's presentation. As everyone knows now, after the presentation, there was new information coming from the governor's office and the Commissioner of Education, and we've been able to update at least the information that we have on this. It's going to look similar, but I'm going to have Dr. Duarte pick it up from here and share with you.
I just want to see, can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. All right, then we're going to go ahead and get started. This is our update to our safe return to school plan. What we talked about was taking inventory. So what we have the principals survey their teachers to see who would be returning at the start of school, who may be returning, who is not returning, and who were they not able to reach at this time. What we did was we pulled a percentage for the board who actually responded yes out of the total teachers. So you can look at Alamo Elementary, and 78% of their staff have confirmed that they are returning, where Asheville Smith is at 96, Banuelos 100, Bowie 73. And you're going to notice Bowie stands out because they had 14 teachers that they were not able to confirm or get information from. We have this for each elementary, and then we have our total percent teachers. So overall, we have 743 teachers, and 650 have said that they will be here at the start of school. That gives us 8%. We did the same thing for our junior schools. You're going to see Baytown, Cedar Bayou, Gentry, Highlands, and Horace Mann. Our low percentage is at Horace Mann, but we did have 11 teachers that were not reached when they were doing the survey. So we're looking at an average of 92% for our junior schools. And for our high schools, we have 516 teachers, 419 said that they were returning. We range from 100% down to 61%. Now our 61% campuses have a large number of teachers that have not responded. So Lee High School's missing 42, for Stewart Career Tech, smaller campus, smaller staff, are missing 9. And so at our high school campuses, we are now at 81% who have confirmed that they will return. What we know is Benefits is working with the staff who are unable to return because they have a high risk or underlying condition. And so they are working with those staff currently. As we've done these checks, we've made sure that they know to communicate with that department. We also went ahead and opened up the registration for our parents to begin to register their students for virtual 100% at-home instruction. Last night, I pulled the numbers at probably about 9:30 last night. And what I did was I looked at how many registered for virtual. I looked at the, from HR, the predicted enrollment for the start of school. And then I've given you a percentage of the students that will be at this time receiving instruction virtually from their home. So at our elementaries, we've got Alamo and Austin at 22% virtual, where Banuelos has 35% virtual. We've got the rest of elementary schools are at 18%. Our highest here would be Travis, 33%, with an average of 28%. So right now we have 3,161 elementary students who we will be providing virtual instruction for. Our junior schools, we were very close. We ranged from 29 to 33%. So we're looking about 1/3 of our junior high population. We had 1,706 parents sign up for virtual instruction, giving an average of 31%.
Okay.
In our high schools, we have traditional campuses that range the highest. When you look at Goose Creek Memorial, Lee, and Sterling, we're 29, 26, and 25%. Our largest alternative campus would be Impact Early College High School, 38%, with Stewart Career Tech High School at 18%, giving us an overall average for our high schools, 27%, or 1,862 students. What I can tell you about our high school campuses is a lot of our parents are waiting to hear if we will be providing the opportunity for our virtual students to participate in extracurricular activities. I believe that if the board approves that, we will see an increase in our high school campuses. And you're going to assume that it would probably be very similar to our elementary and junior highs, which are about 1/3 of the student population. So when we met with the board last week, we talked about the 3 options. All students receiving instruction virtually, our teachers would be in their classroom, they would provide synchronous instruction. We talked about all students returning face-to-face all day, every day, traditional schedule. And then we talked about our hybrid instructional plan. I think it's similar to what Mr. Cotter said. There is no win-win. We have options for parents. We have guidelines set by the state that we have to abide by, but it's going to be difficult no matter what decision's made. So they had a very healthy conversation. And then the next day we all felt like this, and we received surprises. So Texas Education Agency and the Commissioner of Education came out with was our districts in the state of Texas would not be able to provide only virtual instruction. That every district in the state of Texas face-to-face instruction. So as a district in Goose Creek, we are opting to provide virtual as an option. What we were told is it couldn't be the only option we provide in our district. So this is a great visual of what the state is telling us. If you look at that first box, it says districts must provide a daily on-campus learning option. We must do this first box. And it stipulates student plans to participate in on-campus instruction 100% of the time. That's your traditional schedule. Then what they say is, but you can do these other things. You must do the first one, but we're going to let you do remote or virtual instruction. And we are going to let you come up with these hybrid plans. So if you want, you could do all three of these at the start of the school year. So the question, well, can districts develop a hybrid instructional model? And it includes face-to-face, it includes on-campus, it includes asynchronous, it could include synchronous experiences. And yes, we do have that option as a district. Also ask if one of your campuses closes because we have a positive case of COVID-19, could we then remain remote for 100% instruction for the rest of the school year, maybe semester, maybe 6 weeks? And the Commissioner of Education has said no. What they will do is let us shut down a campus for 5 days. We could provide virtual instruction for 5 days. If we close it down for any longer, doesn't matter if we do virtual, we have to make up those days during the school year or at the end of the year. We are still required to meet the 75,600 minutes. The only thing is they will allow any closure to have 5 days of closing. The other piece that the state has put in place is they're going to give a 3-week window. So what the state is saying is you do not have to offer the 100% face-to-face every day the first 3 weeks of school. So our school board could decide we're going to only do virtual for the first 3 weeks, and then we're going to offer all of our models. The board could say we're only going to do virtual and hybrid, do 100% face-to-face for the first 3 weeks. Or the board can decide we're going to do, but at the end of the 3 weeks, the district has to do sort of face-to-face, and they have to provide parents the opportunity to request full-day face-to-face instruction. Now, can we require parents to commit to one or the other? This parents to 2 weeks prior to the start of school. So that's going to be about the July 29th, July 30th, for a parent to lock in to hybrid, to virtual. That's that tipping point. And then at the end of every grading period, at the end of every 6 weeks, a parent can opt in or opt out. This is not where I want my child to go back to school. Things are better and I feel safer, and I like the processes and procedures that were put in place to ensure the safety of my child. They'll have those options to make those changes at the end of the 6 weeks. So we go back to our proposed safe return to school plan. We did post our proposed hybrid plan online so that parents could make some sort of an informed decision on, do they want to go virtual? Are they interested in the hybrid model? And so we wanted to make sure we provided information to our parents. Our elementary, we've gone through with the board. That has not changed. I think one of the things that we're working on is that as a district is we are trying to limit the number of students that are in a classroom. We are trying to ensure that we provide that 6-foot social distancing for our students. So that is what our elementary plan provides for us. Now, when it comes to our junior school, what we shared with our school is we would provide 5 45-minute face-to-face classes. So they would have their 4 foundational core, and they would have 1 elective. And then they would do the 2 additional electives virtually. That would allow us to have, for example, if Horace Mann has 1,000 students, 300 are virtual. We've got 700 students that are going to do face-to-face. That gives them 350 in the morning and 350 in the afternoon. With all of the space on the campus, that gives us the opportunity to do a 15-to-1 student to teacher ratio. But our principals have requested that we offer 4 face-to-face classes that would be 60 minutes long. And that would only be the 4 core classes. So every child coming to school would get ELA, math, science, and social studies. They would then take their electives at home, except our athletes and our fine arts students would in essence have a 5th face-to-face class. Their day would be extended. They would either start at 8 in the morning and they would have their elective from 8 to 9, or they would stay after school from 5 to 6 and have their elective from 5 to 6. These students would have the 5 classes where the rest of the student body would have 4 classes. We wanted to bring both of these options to the board. So when we ask for approval for our hybrid model, they can give us direction on what their preference would be. Again, this is the one that we shared with the community. It's the 5 45-minute classes where our principals are requesting for 60-minute classes with the extension for the extracurricular. Our high school did not change at all. We did clarify here that high school students would have classes 1 through 4 on Monday, classes 5 through 8 on Tuesday, and it would be an AB. So one day they would go 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 1 through 4, and then the next week it would be 5 through 8. So they would have every class every other day with their asynchronous instruction. Again, same model, limiting that 15-to-1 student ratio and trying to limit the transferring of students so that we don't have that constant contact or grouping of students that would make it difficult for us to control. We also talked to the board about the virtual instruction. A lot of that has not changed. That is everything we have for the board. We provided the data, we've collected the information, and we've provided our final hybrid proposal with decision for the board on the junior high. I don't know if anybody has any questions at this time.
Dr. Duarte, I've got a couple of questions. On the high school slide, can you go back to that one a second?
Absolutely.
I saw 4 face-to-face and 4 virtual. Does this account for electives?
Correct. So on my traditional schedule, I have first period. On Monday, I'll have first through 4th, the electives or core. And then the next day, I see the other 4.
Great, great. Now, the question about the total teachers returning. Do you have any idea or have you heard any feedback from teachers on whether or not those numbers would change if they're getting 70, 75, 80% of their students back in the classroom? Because if we're going with those numbers that we looked at a second ago, about a third of the students not returning and staying virtual, how close does that get us to that 15-to-1 ratio, and are we compromising on social distancing?
No, we have looked at the numbers, we've done the math, and it does allow us for the 15-to-1.
Okay.
So we says over 15.
Okay.
Now I've got to put a disclaimer on that. You have a band class, but they may larger area that would allow us social distancing, that they may need to have more than 15 students. But we will make sure that we have the staff to supervise and the space to add it.
Okay.
Dr. Duarte, this is Mr. Clem. If you could go down a couple of slides to the student inventory. That one's good. The number of virtuals, let's just take Alamo for a second. We're projecting that Alamo's going to have 803 students. On the registration that's been going on the past week, did parents have to commit just to virtual, or did any of them register and commit to face-to-face? How did that registration work?
We had parents only register if they were, and so that's
Okay.
what we do communicate with our parents. If you
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I wish I would have asked about this last week, because I see that as a at Alamo, to me, we have a 620 something question mark, not 620 something coming to school. We don't have a commitment from that many people.
And a lot of the virtual, but then they also pulled up the students that have not even registered for next year, and they've been contacting those parents also, and they've been having conversations with those parents. But
Okay.
you are
So
right.
it's
not
going
gonna be
deeper
an
than what we're
exact.
seeing on this slide. Okay.
Yep.
And hindsight's always perfect, but in our next pandemic, we need to remember, in this case, we would need a commitment from everybody to have accurate numbers. So,
No more pandemics, but we'll be
yeah,
communicating with parents when we get
right.
closer.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Dr. Duarte, I have a couple of comments and then I have a question. Number one, I know we have about 445 people on this WebEx today, and I just want to make sure everybody understands one of the first slides Dr. Duarte showed us, that a lot of this we were thrown into a little bit of chaos by the state, Governor Abbott, Commissioner Morath has insisted that we have the startup of school, despite the fact that he's already said he might close the state at a later date. I have a comment in regards to our auxiliary staff, like cafeteria custodians, our aides. It's a little bit, it's hard for teachers that are going to be dealing with people, with our kids and other people in the school, but some of our other workers may not have insurance, and I have a huge concern for people that may feel symptoms and may not go to the doctor simply because of lack of insurance. And I heard a report the other day that there's a lot more people that are passing at home just because they're afraid to go to the hospital because of lack of insurance or because they have fear. My third comment, I guess I have three comments. My third comment has to deal with the junior high model. Can you go back to that slide, Dr. Duarte, please?
Yes.
The junior high schedule. Okay, well, is she on? Okay, there you go. That one, that's the one that I would like to push for. If you go to the other one, I understand why we're pushing for the principal pushing for 4 classes at 60 minutes long for the kids in the core classes. I understand that, but I think the other part is we as adults need to remember what it's like to be a kid, especially a kid in junior high, and that's where our programs like band, art, athletics, those things start to take hold. And if we don't provide some sort of break for kids to enjoy classes, and we just stick them in 60 minutes, I don't think, and I know that the principals are looking out for what's best for the kids overall, but we're really talking about a little bit of getting ready for a test. Once again, I'm not for that. And I speak that not just because I teach an extracurricular and I coach an extracurricular, but mainly because I don't think it's fair to kids that they just go to school every day and they don't have a little bit of what could develop to something better. I mean, there's kids that I'm sure if you look at every great musician in the world, they took band, at least modern ones that took band in junior high when they learned, or orchestra, or people that are teaching Spanish, or people that go and become translators, whatever it is, most of our careers started with the extracurriculars, and I don't think this is fair to kids. I'm not knocking the principals at all. I understand the reasoning behind this. I just don't think it's fair to kids. We can't stick kids for 4 hours a day and not give them a little break. It's bad enough that we don't have recess at junior high and high school. And, you know, I have my opinion about that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. I am adamantly against this model. I'd rather us go with the other one, the 5 classes, 45 minutes each with electives. Ideally, it would be great if we had all the classes and we would do a block like we're doing in high school so that the kids get a chance to go to every class. And that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you so much for the hard work to everybody that's done this, because I know it's been a hard task.
I got one comment. How are we going to, on the virtual, make sure that it sign up for the virtual for us their homework? Are we going to have a mandate that, like in college, if you don't sign up that day, you can't go back to do that homework because you have to follow the routine? In other words, if you open the homework up at 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. and you go to the next day, you can't go back to the previous day and do the work. You have to follow the regimen. Are we going to have some type of plan of that nature?
So yes, the students will be receiving synchronous instruction. So they will have a teacher and they will submit the assignment just like your face-to-face students. And if they are absent that day, they have the 3 days to turn in the assignment, just like a student that is face-to-face. They will follow the same grading guidelines and expectations as our students that come to school.
Okay. That was all I was concerned with, because I know that a lot of kids have figured that I'll go back and make up those assignments and I'll skip this one and come back and do it later on. I just wanted to make sure that all the face-to-face as well as the other kids who are virtual stay on the same track and nobody gets behind.
Yes, sir.
I have a question and then a comment, or a comment and then a question. I'm still with the start and stop times for the 2 different groups for the junior high and high school. You know, with the stop time for group A being the exact same time as the start time for group B. I don't see how you're going to be able to keep those kids social distanced. If that's really what our goal is in this, I don't know how that's going to happen. And I understand it's a transportation issue, but I don't know. I feel like it's just we're just kind of putting it on paper just to kind of make it look like we're trying to do it, but we're not able to do it, you know? And also I have a concern about what's the master schedule going to look like when you've got kids coming, you know, on a half-day schedule, and then you've got some other kids who the parents may decide, I need them there all day. And so you're running 2 different master schedules at the same time. Have y'all thought about what that's gonna look like, how those kids will be scheduled? Or
we have, so on the junior school, because we usually double block a lot of the core, we will double block for those students that are there the entire day. And then we'll be able to build another elective, especially if we do the 5 45-minute face-to-face. Now, we built in within the 45 minutes, we built in a 15-minute cushion for our, and so our principals have had conversations about dismissal, and they dismissal times. They will have staggered to work that's going to look like for our students that are coming in and leaving the building, so that they do.
Okay.
And high school, because you're running a first period, we'll be able to work with the students.
I have a question about kind of what Mrs. Guy was brought up for students whose parents opt for 100% face-to-face. How does that fit into what we're laying out here for hybrid. I mean, if we're required to offer that by the state, how does that work? How is that different than our hybrid?
Well, we're minimizing the number of students that are on the campus at any given time so that we can maintain a 15-to-1 student ratio. If we did a face-to-face, everybody comes back full day, our class sizes will be the traditional class sizes.
Okay, well that's not how, I guess that's not how I understood what the mandate from the state is, or the suggestion, or whatever you want to call what TEA is handed down. If we have to offer 100% face-to-face no matter what, and then we also can offer 100% virtual and a hybrid model, how do all three of those function simultaneously? Where are these 100% face-to-face students going to be in this plan, in this mix?
So there are a couple pieces. The first one is there's enough pushback on the state to back off of the 100% face-to-face and allow the districts to do the hybrid models to provide safety and security for our staff and our students in the best way possible. Our other hopes are parents are supportive of our hybrid model, so we do not have every child or every parent requesting the 100%. We would only offer the 100% if parents are requesting that. Now, if we have a handful of students, then we have to provide a schedule. And that's where I kind of talked about the junior school. You know, I come in the morning, I do my 5 classes, then I'm still there up, double block some of those core classes, those electives, because I am still there. So that child would have a schedule that we would work into. The challenge for us is going to be absolutely trying to maintain the 15-to-1 with some of those 100%.
Right. Okay. So that'll be really interesting to see how that works. Obviously, someone is probably not going to send their child at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but if that's the option, we're going to have to add in transportation to take them home sooner than later. Now, if
No, they would have to run the schedule. They would run, because we
okay,
transportation to get them home at an earlier time.
and I'm assuming that would be the same thing for the high school situation, where they would, I think it was, I'm looking on here, 7:15 to 3:35. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Now those students would be mixed in then with students who were there hybrid.
Yes.
Okay. So you would have to work their 15-to-1 ratio. All right. I understand that a little more clearly, I think, but let me go back to, I just had a question for you when you were doing your inventory of teachers and students. I'm concerned that we have teachers that have not answered whether they will be returning or not, or even maybe they're just simply no answers. Do we know why there's no answer from them? I mean, are they out of contact with the district currently?
That is my understanding, is the campuses reach out to all of their staff, and those are the staff members that did not answer the phone or answer the email or answer the survey for that campus. So they will need to continue reaching out to those staff members for us. So I counted them as non-confirmed. So your percentages don't include any of those staff members. And we have it for our support team for each campus. Just didn't pull that into this PowerPoint, but we can get that to you also.
Okay, yeah, it would be great if these new slides could be sent to us with those as well, to add to. Yeah. All right, and then I had you'd mentioned that the state did give us the option of doing 100% virtual for the first 3 weeks, or even possibly delaying the start date. Are those some things that you have considered in this safe return plan?
So that's our ask of the board. What is our wish for the first 3 weeks of our calendar when we return back to school? We at this time have not pushed back the start date on the calendar. When we met with ILC, we talked about the intersessional calendar. We talked about the COVID response calendar, which started school the very first week in August. We were starting school 2 weeks after their calendars that they put out. Your ILC committee and your principals, majority opted for our calendar. It is an option to wrap anything around schedules and everything else that the state puts out, but that's something that they adjusted at this time for districts. It kind of ties your hands in regard to, do you push back, do you push it forward? But the board can absolutely opt to move any of those back.
Okay.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure. Jump in.
Going back, you just made your comment that we're kind of, our hands are tied on the calendar because of why?
On assessment calendar that the state provides, they have not made any adjustments and no recommendations, so that makes it challenging for districts also. It would be nice if they rolled things out to say, we have some flexibilities, but they usually give that to you after the fact, not before.
But because we're a district of innovation, we can set our calendar however we want to. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And so does moving the first day of school, how does that impact contracts? Or does it?
Dr. O'Brien, you're going to have to take that question.
That's not a question, is it?
Nope.
Is that a Mr. Chapa question? Mr. Chapa, are you in?
So I can speak to, if we move the date back, you have to make those days of instruction up for the students. The question
right, and it would, our contracts do not have, this is Eloy, I'm sorry. Our contracts do not have number of days on there. It just says that you're going to be employed for the 2020, 2021 school year but it doesn't have a start date, doesn't have an end date. So it would be whatever the board determines for that school year to be, then those are the days that you'd be under contract.
If we, as a board, chose to push back the start date of school, would that have to change your payroll calendar based on law, not anything else?
Well, it's hard to answer that question, but I can tell you that our pay is annualized for all of our employees. So our employees who even work 187 days still get paid even during the summer months when they're not getting paid. So I would say that it really wouldn't affect it, because whatever your start date is, you're still going to make up those days at the end, and you're being annualized. So I think we'd be okay.
Okay. If I'm a traditional 187-day teacher contract, and I know we spread their pay over 24 payments, what is their last paycheck if they worked for us last year?
It's going to be here in August, because then they get their first paycheck in September.
Okay, so if we push the date back, could there possibly be a gap before they would get paid again?
I don't believe so, but it would also depend on when we would be able to start back up again next year. And once that was determined, then we would be able to go ahead and I don't believe there would be a gap. No.
Okay.
Primarily for teachers, but people who are on 240 contract would have some conflict of some sort.
Okay. We may have to give them extra vacation days or something. Just where my thought is going with this, I'm sure nobody's following me because I barely am, but if we could if we could have, and I'm going back to my experience when we had Katrina and Rita that year. I know we developed no less than 6 calendars that school year uh, because things just changed moment by moment when we could go back to school after no, you can't, yes, you can. Well, now we have to change this event, that event, the other event. So with that said, we kind of scratched that year off as Katrina Rita year and hope we never have a calendar like that again. But maybe we could buy our district some more time by seriously considering rewriting this coming year's calendar to the 2020-2021 COVID calendar, not start till old-timey day after Labor Day or something like that.
Yeah.
And then even in a little while, not right now, but we still have that. Now we can do 3 weeks of virtual on top of that if we need to give this thing more time to pan out and show us what it's going to do.
Ricky, can I piggyback on that?
Please do.
I was sitting here thinking the same thing, that if we could somehow buy some time using a combination of a delay of our start and that 3-week virtual. I mean, right now things are changing almost daily. The state and the TEA are modifying things weekly, and the numbers are just escalating. If that can buy us some time to at least see if these new directions can help or change, it also buys us time to tighten down the details on how exactly we are going to do this.
And I think everybody sitting here would agree that our administration has done an amazing job of putting this safe return to school plan together. And I can't think of how they could have possibly done a better job. Just, I'm still concerned about when we execute the plan.
So one of the things we discuss anytime we create a calendar is the balanced calendar, having 90 days on the front end, 90 days on the back end. And this may be, as you referenced, Mr. Clem, just one of those years where we don't.
Right.
They have 80 days on the front end and 100 days on the back end.
And we could name it the I promise to never do this again to you calendar. You know, I mean, there's no guarantee of that, but I think when you change a calendar, people assume it's going to move forward this way. And I want to make a point that this is, I made a comment to several friends the last few weeks that in the spring, we were in crisis mode. We did crisis teaching, we did crisis virtual learning, we did crisis pass out packets, we did crisis grab and go food. It was just figure it out on the fly. What we're going to do this coming school year is recovery of all of that. We're still not going to do education the way it ought to be done, even if we went 100% face to face. There's so many things we're going to have to do with masks and PPEs and who knows what and all, that it's not going to be a normal school year no matter what. So if we have an unbalanced calendar, if we go to school until, and I know people are going to throw rotten tomatoes at me when I walk out the building, but if we go to school till the end of June and then come back in August the following fall, it's a one-time thing to try to be safe getting our kids and our teachers back into school right now and following all the government guidelines that are tying our hands on what we can really do. So let's look at, I just see this calendar thing as something that we have local control of that we might want to consider and do something to protect our people from what we see going on out in the world right now.
I have just one question. Will it affect any of our people, any of the employees like bus drivers, some of the cafeteria, the food service employees, that type of thing? Is
mean
it
like
as far
like
as their
non-exempt?
pay?
You mean like the non-exempt employees?
So some that are paid hourly that maybe.
Right. It would delay their paycheck.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct, especially for our hourly employees, because they wouldn't be receiving their first paychecks at what we would normally start our normal school year.
Can we do something based on the crisis to accommodate that?
Yes.
Who is that?
I'm sorry, this was David Hodgins, your school attorney.
Hey, jump right in, David.
Welcome,
Yes.
Mr. Hodgins.
Both Dr. O'Brien and Mr. Chapa have done such an excellent job. I haven't needed to weigh in, and I affirm all the administration and their excellent, and the board for just excellent questions, and some of which we may need to address in executive session if need be. But with respect to, you are not alone. The districts throughout the state are struggling with the very questions and the very issues that have been communicated tonight by both our citizens and in citizens participation, as well as our administration and our board. But with respect to the last question on, does the board have any flexibility to address issues of our, some of our great non-exempt employees, if in fact you elected to, which some districts are considering, bumping to a later start date in light of the COVID, it would be very similar to the issues that the board previously addressed with respect to COVID itself, when employees could not come for a period of time, et cetera. It's the same ability, if you will. It would require resolution and public declaration and things of that nature. But if the question to the board is there a legal mechanism, the answer generally to that is yes. There are a lot of considerations to go into that decision. Of course, are all the decisions with respect to any time you affect a calendar. But this is to Trustee Clem, if you've pointed out, a very unique circumstance, and unfortunately it continues to challenge from March forward to now. And we do anticipate potentially that even the advice from the agency will be reconsidered or possibly altered again, as Trustee Carter said, weekly. I suspect next week you should be prepared for a little bit on these issues. But I think your administration, based on the presentation tonight from Dr. Duarte at the direction of Dr. O'Brien, has hit every aspect of ability and advice that exists at this date before you and these different models and options that you've articulated, the administration that is, to the board, and the questions that you've asked are, at least as your legal counsel, are just spot on. And everyone is trying to balance both the safety of staff and students with the commitment to educate the young people of Goose Creek Consolidated ISD. And so there will be other legal questions that we'll consult with the administration on and with the board as appropriate. But that's a long-winded answer. And I'll stop right now. But that is the answer to your question, I hope.
Thank you very much. Would that be dependent upon the governor's declaration or disaster declaration still being in place?
Not necessarily, because the analysis is whether or not it's a public purpose, and that public purpose is not necessarily based only on a declaration by the governor. Although I suspect that's not going to be an issue, Trustee Clem, to be honest, if we're talking about over the next even with the options of consideration. But certainly we'll have to look at what the authorities authorize, both the governor and commissioner, for respect to allow what's allowed as well as what's funded, which the administration has pointed out as part of the consideration as well. And so from a legal standpoint, your legal team can meet a lot of legal requirements in lots of creative ways, if you will, at the board's direction, the administration's direction. But some of the determining factors or some of the aspects will still be, in some aspects, subject to what is allowable and or funded by both our state authorities and possibly, depending on what the advice may transpire over the next week, our local authorities allow and provide. Thank you.
David, one of the things that the commissioner and governor have stuck with is the assessment calendar. They've stuck with no funding, no work, no funding. They've stuck with some of those hardline terms. Do you see any of that changing or addressing? Not that a school report card is more valuable than the safety of each and every employee and student, but it just would seem like they would be working with us rather than what it appears to be setting these mandates that are inflexible and fixed. Do you see that as those types of things changing possibly?
Well, I would say since we are online and recorded with all 400 members and recorded for everyone in the state, certainly I, just as one observer, understand that the governor and leadership and commissioner are committed to the education of our students and to getting our economy back as much as possible. Let's go ahead and say that, if we may. But to your question, Dr. O'Brien, I do think at least that there are ongoing conversations at lots of levels with respect to reconciling the different efforts of trying to get folks instruction to continue for students in a safe environment on the one hand, with the needed flexibility for school districts and other mandates like an assessment calendar or a school reporting. And we know that the commissioner, not initially, but certainly later last spring, affected all of those calendars. But we also know, to Trustee Clem's point, that that was in a true unplanned sort of crisis timeframe. So you can't predict would be the standard, and it depends is my standard legal answer, as you know, Dr. O'Brien. That has not changed tonight either. But are there active conversations with respect to that? And perhaps later this week, after all the runoff elections and other times and feedback have transpired, I'm certainly hopeful that there'll be much more support and reconciliation of those very issues. I do know that there are many individuals on behalf of our state, as well as our local government authorities, and certainly our school districts, and those that are advocating on those concerns, having those discussions, and ultimately we'll see what is persuaded our authority. So that's, again, long-winded. I'd say yes in discussion, but no guarantees. Thanks.
So, Mr. Hodgins, would you recommend that we hold off on taking action on these items until after closed session, where we could visit with you a little bit further?
That's at the board's pleasure, and Dr. O'Brien, that's certainly fine with your counsel. I do think that obviously the board is going to have to give some direction, but recognize that whenever that action is taken, whether it's tonight or in another special meeting, the information is likely going to change, and most likely in the next 10 days. So with respect to our state guidance on some of the very questions this administration has struggled with in the last couple of weeks, and this board has struggled with and asked about tonight.
Thank you.
Dr. O'Brien, I just had two more short questions that kind of speak to what several of our emails and citizen participation speeches have been regarding, and that is, what is the plan when a classroom does become infected or someone in the classroom tests positive? What is the plan for that procedure at that moment?
I believe I'd have Mr. Chapa respond to that if he's online still. The thing with that is we believe that's also changing. The recommendations, we've heard comments in a press conference in line with the guidance that we've been provided. So, and we also think those things are going to change as well. We've heard everything from if one child tests positive, everyone goes home for 5 days, was one of the things heard at a press conference, but that's not the actual guidance from the CDC. So we're still sorting through that. Mr. Chapa, did you care to embellish on that answer? We want to hold off until we have more information on that.
Yes, sir. You stated just exactly what I was going to say, that that information has been shared with us, but that is constantly changing right now. I think that Dr. Duarte also alluded to the fact that the state is saying that if we need to shut down, that we're going to be able to shut down for 5 days, but then we're going to be required to open back up, and then be having to make up those days. So it's one of those situations that still right now we don't have a clear-cut answer, and it's constantly changing. But it's a very valid question that has to be answered.
So one of the things I can share with you in regards to our this building, Central Admin's been open all summer, and we've sort of used it as a pilot to identify what the pattern might be. And one of the things that came to Stephanie Meyer's attention really quick, Director of Benefits, was the length of time it takes to get a test. So it's ranging anywhere from 5 to 7 days. And so she has worked with our local healthcare providers to expedite that. And I believe the current commitment is 48 hours, with her anticipation of sometime within the next 2 weeks, possibly getting that down to a 10-minute turnaround. And that would change the dynamic. Clearly, if everyone has to go home for 2 weeks, it cripples the organization, and it's a dysfunctional education system at that point in time. So the other thing that I didn't want to allude to too much was possibly instead of a building going home, maybe a wing, maybe like this building's divided up into quadrants. Maybe a quadrant of this building would go home that may have been in close contact with a positive test.
Has there been any kind of discussion on if that were the case? If, say, a wing of 6th graders had to go home because they had mutual teachers or students, buses or whatever that tested positive. Some of them may show symptoms or illness, some may not. Has there been any kind of discussion about them being sent home and being logged in at that time instead of teachers who aren't ill, don't show symptoms, but now they have to go home because their students, some of their students have tested positive? Is it not possible to migrate their classroom 100% online? I mean, almost immediately, since we're doing a hybrid fashion?
So Dr. Duarte, I'll let you respond to that. I know that they're trying to limit the amount of online, 100% online, that is.
So Ms. Woods, originally the guidance we received was if you have a case in a classroom and that classroom is contained, then that classroom would be the only one that would need to quarantine for that amount of time, meaning that the students could go virtual until they're able to return. Then
and I would assume that would include the teacher as well.
Correct. And the teacher would be able to provide that synchronous instruction if they were healthy. Now, if we had a teacher that was not healthy, we could, transition them to the virtual teacher that we're using for the other students, where we wouldn't lose any instruction.
Yeah.
So we would absolutely have that opportunity.
Okay, well, I know that's a concern on a lot of parents' minds, as what is the actual plan or process going forward in the case that there's a bus of, students that have had contact with one another. So I think it's important for us to communicate what those possible plans would be in that instance, that, and for teachers as well. No, you don't have to take your sick days unless, of course, you're sick. But if you just are sent home, then you transition to virtual, and you don't lose your lesson time. You don't lose your days, your business days, personal days, sick days, whatever they may be. Another thing, too, that I think we need to look at is, because we have a lot of questions about extracurriculars. We have questions about athletics, band, extracurriculars. What about our teachers' stipends for those? Are they still entitled to those stipends if they're time with their students is reduced because of the current situation?
Yes, ma'am. Our intention is to support our teachers' stipend. We anticipate that they will be able to continue that. It may not be, as you said, as the intensity of the long practices on the football field, marching in the parking lots and what have you. It may not be as frequently or as lengthy as stated, but they're still performing that duty and getting our kids prepared.
Okay, I think I have no further questions. Are there any other comments that we want to make at this time, or have we sufficiently ridden this horse?
Have we,
we worn him out.
have we officially decided there was not going to be any fall sports?
No, sir. That's not been decided by UIL.
Okay. Because I noticed some districts have decided not to do fall sports, but I haven't heard us say one way or the other.
I haven't heard that from public school. I've heard it at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
Ms.
I have
Woods,
seen.
can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Sorry. Can I say one more thing, Ms. Woods? When you get to this agenda item, we are for permission to move forward just so we can communicate very clearly with our parents and the amount of work it takes to get the master schedules done and into the systems and set the calendars up. Did I cut out?
Yes, ma'am.
I hear
You're
you.
there.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we would just like some ability to be able to start to move forward with that planning process. So that's what we would ask. If you approve the hybrid, at least we can start setting up schedules and getting the communication out to parents.
And I think the way you've worded it there allows us to make the adjustments when we get new guidance from the state.
Yes.
Action item number 4A.
Are we still there?
We're waiting for you, Howard.
Oh, yeah. I had a question because, UIL controls everything from the athletic aspect, but if this is a throw up here, if we have to suspend fall sports and we come to January and everything is back to normal, are we gonna? Do you think UIL will resume a season for the fall in the spring?
I don't know if Dr. Mulvaney is on the line with us. He is in touch with the UIL on a weekly basis for sure, maybe even daily basis with Dr. Breithop and Dr. Cousins. Are you on there, Dr. Mulvaney?
Yes, sir. Right now, the UIL is still planning to start everything August 3rd. But again, things are rapidly changing and they may push that back. I have a call with them tomorrow.
And I do too. I have a call, superintendent's call with the commissioner tomorrow as well. So,
is it possible that we can get some kind of understanding on fall sports? Because I know a lot of kids who become seniors who are possible future college players would like to know from that aspect.
yes, sir. We're going to do everything we can to allow those students to participate, show off their wares. I know that the coaches have really done a good job. Forgive me, Dr. Mulvaney, there's a computer program. What's it called? Not Home Run. What is it called?
You're talking Huddle.
Huddle.
Yeah.
Huddle is a venue in which the students can be video recorded, and all of those highlights can be shared with the collegiate coaches.
Okay.
We do anticipate continuing that program this fall as well.
Okay.
I could see a modified schedule, abbreviated schedule, a late start schedule, but I do think, Mr. Sampson, we will have our athletics and all of our extracurricular in the fall semester if school is open. If school is
Yeah.
open, we're going to have those things.
Safely.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. O'Brien, Dr. Duarte, and all those who joined in this discussion for a safe return to school plan. At this time, we will move to action items on the agenda, item 4A, which was the consideration of the district hybrid model for face-to-face instruction, conditional to any adjustments mandated by future state guidance. Do I have any motion on this action at this time?
I would like to make a motion that we move to closed meeting and take up items A and B when we come back.
I second that
I
motion.
second that.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Clem, seconded by Mr. Cotter to move to 4C, which is closed meeting, and then resume after closed meeting with action items 4A and B. All in favor of said motion, please raise your right hand. Yeah, was there?
Madam President, is there any way we can go ahead and take care of C as well?
C is closed meeting.
Right, but if we're going to take care of A and B in closed meeting, can we go ahead and do A, B, and C? I'm sorry, I know what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Let me clarify my motion. I intend for us to have our entire closed meeting, then return and take up action items A and B.
Okay, so the motion is to go to 4C right now and come back to 4A and B after C.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Okay,
And,
so
and Madam President, this is David Hodges. I just want to be sure that you identify for purposes of the motion, or the individual who's, if that was Trustee Clem who made the motion, that's go to closed meeting subject to sections 551071 through 551087 as presented.
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure that was, I thought that was the motion, but I just wanted to hear it out loud on the recording.
right, I will get there once we move items 4A and B. So if that is the motion on the floor right now, all in favor of said motion, raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
7-4, 0 against, 0 abstaining. So we will now go to action item 4C, which is closed meeting. The board will now recess into a closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. We have Texas Government Code Section 551.071, .072, 073, 074, 075, 076, 082, 083, 084, and 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed meeting. The time is now 7:47. Thank you. The time is now 10:16 p.m. and we are reconvened into open session. No action was taken while the board was in closed session. And my agenda is gone. Thank you. Okay, so prior to closed session, we moved to delay taking action on item 4A and 4B. We have item 4A, consideration of the district hybrid model.
Yes, sir.
I can hear you, Howard.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear us?
I'm doing this every time.
Okay, so do we have a motion for item 4A, which was consideration of district hybrid model for face-to-face instruction, conditional to any adjustments mandated by future state guidance?
We do. I would make a motion that we approve the district hybrid model for face-to-face instruction with the following board requirements. Number one, that we change the start date of school to September 8th of 2020. At that point, we begin with 3 weeks of virtual instruction for all students, then begin following the hybrid plan with the 5-period junior school schedule, and give the superintendent authority to make adjustments to the hybrid plan based on state and local authorities' orders when necessary.
Second.
So I have Mr. Clem, well spoken, and I have a second by Mr. Laredo. Any discussion or questions, comments on said motion? All in favor of said motion, please raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
7 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstaining. Motion passes as stated. Moving on to 4B, consideration of extracurricular participation for virtual learners.
Could we have a little explanation of that before we make a motion?
Dr. O'Brien, would you like to read the backup for 4B to us?
Yes, ma'am. Consideration of the approval of the board extracurricular participation for virtual learners. LEAs may develop a local policy that would exclude students who are learning remotely from all extracurricular activities. The policy can apply to all remote students or solely to non-resident remote students who transfer in from outside of the LEA's geographic boundaries. If the LEA decides to allow non-resident remote students to participate in extracurricular activities, the residency requirements for UL activities still apply. Any exclusion policy must be applied equally to all students and equally to all extracurricular activities. The district recommends approving all virtual learners to participate in extracurricular activities.
So you're recommending that we let certain students do online school, virtual learning, and then show up for football practice?
That's correct. That is the recommendation I believe most school districts are going with.
Did the UIL make a
Put the
ruling on that already?
Yes.
I thought I saw something out by the UIL.
Yeah, I did too.
Forgot about that.
I make the motion based on
Yeah.
the recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a motion, Mr. Laredo?
So I'm asking, can we make that motion and considering whatever the
Go
UL
out,
has
go.
to change? Ultimately, they're the ones that are going to say yay or nay
Go,
on the
go,
UL.
Right.
go, go, go.
Okay, I'll make the motion. Any UIL decision or policy.
Okay, so state your motion again, I'm sorry.
All I can hear is Howard. I can't hear anything else.
Okay, Howard, we're making a motion about athletics and extracurriculars, so Mr. Laredo, you'll repeat your motion, please.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that I'll move to
My
approve.
phone won't.
I move to approve pending any extra UIL policy changes or based on whatever the UIL decides. That's my motion. I don't know how to state it.
Can someone repeat the motion to me?
Mr. David Hodgins, is your motion to approve extracurricular participation for virtual learners subject to UIL action and authority?
Yes.
That's the motion.
That's what I was trying to say.
I thought you were saying that. I just wanted to verify. Thank you, sir.
That's the motion. Thank you, sir. So we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Laredo.
Second.
We have a second by Mrs. Guy. Is there any other comment or question or your concerns?
I'm not sure I understand the thought process behind not coming to class, but coming to extracurricular. I mean, I understand that's why we come to school. Trust me, I understand that. But if we want to do that, shouldn't we have to come to school?
I think that my opinion
Yeah,
is that,
please.
my opinion is that you have more. Okay, so for example, right now, at least the last UIO meeting that we had with ours, we could have 15 athletes per one coach. And that's all for that. If I send my kid to school, and this is now how I feel, I'm just saying, if I'm a parent who doesn't feel safe with their child being in school, exposed to people for 4 or 5 hours a day, versus them being exposed to a handful of people for 1 hour, it greatly reduces the amount of, or say redundancy, exposure to people around them. I think that's the thought process.
And okay, we all have our opinions on those.
Mr. Clem, that's why, I'm sorry, this is Melissa Duarte. That's why TEA has given the leeway for districts to determine if they'd like to ban virtual learners from participating in extracurricular, which is why we brought the recommendation forward so that we could communicate to our family.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have any other questions or comments concerning the motion? At this time, all in favor of motion on the floor, please raise your right hand or say aye. Any opposed to said motion? And no abstentions? Motion, I'm sorry, Mr. Sampson, did you can't hear me? Okay, so we have one abstention. I have 5 for, 1 against, and 1 abstention. Motion passes. All right, moving on to agenda item 4, action items, and we will now move to item E, consideration of contracts for purchasing real estate. We have 1, 2, and 3 purchase of 0.3651 acres located at Market Street, purchase of approximately 3.7 acres at Cedar Bayou Lynchburg, and purchase of property to accommodate future needs of the district.
I move to approve item E 1, 2, and 3 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem and a second by Mr. Laredo. Are there any questions or comments at this time? None heard. All in favor of said motion, please raise your right hand or say aye.
Have no sound.
I can hear you, Howard. You can't hear me? Okay, so that would be 6 for, 1 abstention.
I can see you, but I can't hear you.
Did you see that, Howard? Nope, can't hear me. Okay, so we have 1 abstention, motion passes. All right, at this time, we will now recess once again into closed session so that we may consider item F. Board will now recess into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 072, 073, 074, 075, 076, 082, 083, 084, 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed meeting. Time is 10:26 p.m. The time is now 11:20, and I believe we are all back online here. I see Mr. Sampson has joined us virtually again, and everybody's logged in. So we will reconvene into open session. Let it be known that no action was taken while the board was in closed session. We will move to agenda item 4, action items. F, consideration and possible action regarding superintendent evaluation and or amendment to superintendent contract and related actions. Do I have a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I move to approve the superintendent's evaluation and amend the superintendent's contract as discussed in executive session.
I could have went to sleep on y'all. Y'all never know.
I second that motion.
I saw you were on here. Okay, so we have a motion from
Just
Mrs.
raise your
Guy.
hand when you're ready to vote. I raise mine.
Okay. Can you hear us, Howard?
I don't think you can.
Okay, Howard.
I'm gonna have to start reading lips.
All right, read that. Can you read that, Howard? Did you get that? All right, so the motion is that
That's
board...
a once fellow said comprende.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Ms. Guy and a second was from Mr. Clem. All in favor, is there any discussion or comment on this motion as presented? None said. All in favor of motion as presented by Ms. Guy, please raise your right hand
man.
or say aye.
Okay.
So we have 7 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. Motion passes as presented.
I'd like to make a motion if I can. President Woods, may I make a motion that we adjourn?
You may make such motion. Do we
I'll
have
Have some
And-
discussion, please.
I have to get better at this technology.
Okay, so motion is to adjourn the meeting at 11:23, seconded by Ms. Guy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
11:23 p.m. Board is adjourned.